Game 365 podcast. I'm in the building with 9 Brand, Portland, Oregon. Ken Jones, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing wonderful, brother.
Yes, sir, man. So let's tell the world, man, where you from, where you grew up at. Let's kind of like start right there.
Okay, yeah, I'm Southeast San Diego, born and raised. Did the normal background, you know, came up in it. Parents is a part of it, so it was a lineage type thing.
Yeah.
I got into a little trouble, took a vacation for a while, and then came out on the other side of 18 and figured I'm gonna try to explore the world a little bit, and ended up in Seattle.
So how just, you know, growing up in San Diego, how was life though as a kid though? You know, was it fun? Was it, you know what I'm saying, kind of structured? Did, you know, you just had like, you know, just the run of the streets, you know, just like so you can get everybody to understand just growing up in the streets of San Diego, you know?
So I always paint the picture, people think of SeaWorld, you know, they think of the beach, which those do exist, right?
Yeah.
But it's always two sides to every coin. So over in the Southeast where I grew up at, you know, it's definitely the triggeration station.
Yeah,
type
yeah.
energy over there, extra trip. But with that, growing up, Pops was in my life, Mom in my life, Mom's side of the family, you know, they was outside since forever, a lot of namesakes in the city. With that, Pops is a structured, disciplined, working man.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
having that duality and being able to pick up on a lot of that young, that was the childhood. I think me just being a curious kid in general, it was, I need to learn. I didn't have a big brother, so it was, what's going on out here? And I was always into trying to figure things out. With that said, childhood was fun. You don't realize that things be wild until you look back on it when you're out of the situation. So again, the struggles of, you know, parents going through the crack era, and the results of that on the community, that definitely affected family and things that was going on in life. But again, as a kid, it's just like this is all around, so it's normal.
Yeah, for sure.
It's abnormal till later. So yeah, it's all the regulars. With that, just like SoCal, you think of LA, all the gang stuff, all those same politics play all their way through.
Yeah.
To that borderline. And so everything that you hear about your Compton, your South Central and all that was happening, and also in a much more concentrated space. So that was the upbringing and the understanding of what it was.
Yeah.
I think I bring up this story about Boys in the Hood, that being one of the earliest movies I remember seeing in the theater, right? My mom took me to go see that. And going through that, Ricky getting shot didn't do nothing to me. Reading that, Doughboy died 2 weeks later, that was tearing up.
Yeah,
like, that got me. Like him to me, he was the guy. He was the misunderstood one here, and I somehow connected with that. And I think that's been kind of this narrative through life of certain squares that I done chose to stand on. May have made me seem and appear like the black sheep or the bad guy, but it's done in a way that I'm loving the people that I love, and I'm going to do what I need to do for them. And it may not always be the softest delivery.
Yeah. Being though that San Diego's next to the border, do you realize or did you learn Spanish early as a kid?
You know what's crazy about that? My childhood friend, shout out Carlos and his whole family, Mexicans. I was around it all the time. I can interpret. Speaking, I just came back from Mexico and realized like I wasted certain relationships and everything that I'd had time and energy spent into with Mexican women speaking Spanish, being around their family. Bro, all I can do is talk shit.
Yeah.
That's it.
Was there some type of like or for fashion, you know, like when you were younger, did you like dressing? Did you like, you know, putting on your favorite outfit, you know what I'm saying, on Friday to go to school or a party, or did you just come different? Was everybody looking at Ken like, man, Ken puts this shit together a little bit different around here?
Absolutely not. So, you know, what I will say is clothes were clean, shirts was iron, pants was iron. Niggas was broke. And overall, parents didn't give a damn about no latest shoes, none of that. So for me, it was white tees, 501s, Dickies, Chucks. That was essentially, and not even the Chucks, the East Siders from Payless. That was the lineage coming up, and then hitting that middle school where I think that's the turning point for most kids, because things that was able to slide in elementary got tricky. And I think about my first day of 7th grade, Popsy got me some knockoff Grant Hills. Bro, I got flamed from walking on campus at the end of that day. And I think that like did something in my head to change how I moved forward. And from there is when it was like, okay, I actually got to do some things, and, you know, some pivots was made in life. And
yeah. Did the streets of San Diego make you, you know what I'm saying, into the man you are today. And I mean, like, you know, ideologically and just discipline wise and just, you know, being a stand up, you know, saying black man in the world, you know?
Yeah. I think it definitely added, because it was, again, just somebody I'm an explorer. I'm curious. I'm moving around. So it's a lot of stuff that I had to handle, and I had to handle it on my own. Because, again, I don't got a big brother. So it's me bumping my head and going out here. I've been tall since forever. I'm 6'5". I've been 6'5" since I was 15 years old. So with that, I looked older. So therefore, most of the times getting down is I'm singled out because they thinking I'm the oldest here. I've always been the youngest in my friend group. The funny part, you know what I mean? But I think some of that helped to kind of shape the way in which I've approached the world, being that you have those two different sides and being able to drive out to the beach, and this is like a whole different world. You know what I mean? And seeing people that have they've saved up to come do vacation here in San Diego, and I'm just on the other side of the city. It's not that type of time, you know. So getting time being spent or spending time out on the other side and having conversations with people, that helped me. And what I'm going to honestly say, Seattle. So the thing is, my mama moved to Seattle when I was 10, so I would go back and forth regularly. Seattle probably gave me more game about how to navigate in the world, because that was a melting pot. Where I came from, it was black, Mexican. That was it. Getting up to Seattle, that was the most light-skinned people I've seen in my life, which means that there was a lot of co-mingling.
For sure.
And so with that, I say that it was a mixture of that, and then the game of being able to speak to just about anybody, understanding how to work in these different spaces with these different type of people. That's what I got from there. As far as standing on certain squares, that came from the upbringing in Dago, the politics of there. I think that's the what Ray called my Cali radar, and just being on
swivel, head on the swivel, military minded. Respect it though, man. We'll speed up to Seattle. So once you got to Seattle, back and forth, was there something different that you were taking from Seattle, going back and forth to Cali, that just start becoming part of the fabric of your character?
For surely. I remember I went to Washington Middle School, so
man, shout out Washington. That's where I went, bro. Shout out Washington Middle School.
That's where I was all 23rd in Jackson. We first got there, and you know, Mom's got up. It was a middle of the night move. This wasn't a planned thing. Got up there, so we was off Cherry at first, right over by the old Catfish Corner. It was right there in the YWCA for a couple months, and then we transitioned over to by Yesler Terrace. We was in that little space for a second, and then shot up the hill and was up off 23rd. So going to Washington Middle School, that was a cold introduction, because me showing up in my fresh tee, my fresh 501s and Chucks, and it was like, that's not it. And having the back and forth, and it wasn't until winter break. Over winter break, got a pair of J's, went and hit the Bound Marché, got the little Nautica fit, and came back, and it was like, oh, there's a different acceptance now. I took all my lumps, because I'd be sitting in class, snapping with all the light-skinned people. We going back and forth. It used to be these whole sessions. So once they said I could hold my own, then it was like, okay, there's some love there. And again, the way in which Seattle, it was really the melting pot. That was the first time that I had experienced that. And so the game that I was able to get from there, maneuvering around, living in the Central, then getting to the South End, and then ending up out in West Seattle, off Del Ridge, White Center, like and it's all of these are their own places. And then having time in Tacoma, it's like these are their own worlds within this small place. Overall, it's not huge, but it's a lot going on. And I think that being able to take some of the fashion stuff honestly came from Seattle, because that was way different than what we was doing down there, right? At that time too, I think it was an exchange, because even when I was coming up, bringing politics and stuff from home up there, it was turning heads up, running around and stuff. But I think the fusion of those definitely helped to build me into who I am at this point.
Where at what point in your life did you realize that coming from the streets, coming from a gang culture, that is kind of like where it started at, in a sense, Cali, and then coming up to, Seattle, but then identifying that I have a creative mindset, there's other things that I like about what I'm doing, and then I got kind of like a vision, that the homies don't have. Because sometimes you be the only one in your group or the homies that you used to run with that, just has a different idea about the direction or projection of their life.
Yeah. I think there's that's been in me since childhood. There's always been a thing running through my head of, I'm going to be all right. I don't know what that's going to look like in the end, but I know that I'm meant for more than what's going on. And that's from young. And this is where I say the pivot for me was always being the smart kid. Bro, at school, it was The Encyclopedia Britannica just on some fun of like being, oh, this is great. This is that wasn't getting any backpats. These little science awards and all this stuff, that wasn't getting no backpats. And I ran a fade. A little 6th grader kept doing the extras, and I'm in the 4th. Got down with old boy, and it changed how people interacted with me. And it was like, oh, now, oh, that's what's cool. Yeah. And so for me, that was that switch of like, okay, the aggression is what's gonna get the attention. But always having that creative portion. When I was at the house, bro, I'd leave a block to go watch Shark Week. Yeah, yeah. Like, I'm in the house. I'm about to get these facts. And so that's always been a part of what was there. And I think that's been the underlying thing. But I do believe that some people are chosen in general. And it's beyond. Because you can have siblings raised in the same household, same parents, same condition. And the way that they approach life completely different. And I think there's got to be something that's innate desire and drive within you. And it has to be internal, because if you're looking for the external validation, you're gonna keep giving up. Man, and I think that's where a lot of people don't even give themselves a chance to start, is because they're seeking the backpats versus this is what I want to do because I have an idea of how I want to impact.
That's real, because one of my favorite quotes is that if you live for acceptance, you'll die from rejection. You know what I'm saying? Bar. And ever since I learned that quote, I was doing time, learned that in the cell. I was reading something. And I was like, wow, you know, you be out here trying to get validation from the crowd. But you can spend your whole life trying to get that validation. You can lose your life, or you can die trying to get that which is aimed damn near to kill you, in a sense.
It's just that. And the thing is that it's an addiction like anything else, right? Them dopamine hits that come from that. The turned upness. That's why you see get down and they charge. Like it's an addiction, and if you're getting them backpats and that's what you're doing it for, that can go bad.
So speaking of what you were saying, because a lot of people don't realize that the concept that I've kind of attached to my mindset coming from the streets is warrior, philosopher, king. So that's a street guy. Warrior, being in battle, being in, you know what I'm saying, the field, and understanding the philosopher's way of thinking. Intelligence, knowledge is the key. You see what I'm saying? And a lot of people don't turn that, you know, leaf or flip that coin. You know, they stay just warrior. They stay, you know, full of aggression. They don't understand that the intelligence and studying and reading and learning, and that is the actual transition in order to be a true king in this world, because you ain't really worth nothing trying to be the hardest out here. You know what I'm saying? You have to be CEO. You have to be, you know, businessman, entrepreneur. You have to be thought leader. You have to be somebody who, you see what I'm saying, is really recognized for doing something. And it's only so long a cat's gonna respect the killer and the warrior. You might fear that person per se, but the respect is for those that create change. You see what I'm saying? And create new paths. So talk to me about that, bro.
So that right there, getting into the space of where you be in the muscle, we got it. You know what I'm saying? We got it. But being able to get to a point where it's really here. And you also learn that a lot of the stuff you learned in them streets are transferable skills. They just have different titles. And this is one of the things I preach to people is about once you understand the language, most everything that the skills that you have, especially if you was outside and making some kind of movement and just wasn't a crash out, a lot of these things are skills that are like highly sought in these Fortune 500 companies and so on. And not to say that everybody want to go work a 9 to 5, but understand that your skills, they have a name. And once you understand the language of that, right, even if you're working as a teacher, the things that you do as a teacher could transfer into the tech company. It's just different name for those same skills. And trying to identify those can be where the problem lies. And I think there's also something to a lot of focus sometimes be on the areas you're not good. The areas that you can seek improvement. And it's always great to be improving yourself, but it's also a better use of your time if you actually focus on the things you're already naturally gifted at. There's people who are able to work a room. That is something that people pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to sit in seminars on how to do that. If you've got that, that is a skill set that ain't really taught. You can't be taught that, or you can be taught parts of it, but if it's in you, it's in you. You might be great with numbers. Your ability to memorize names, like all of these things are skills. And being able to take those things that you might not have got your interest in, or you was just talking before we hopped on here about going and hopping on YouTube to research some stuff if you're looking at a piece of equipment. stuff like that, actually researching, going into and spending that time. That's the stuff that puts you forward. So now getting back to the actual question in terms of when you go from that transition into being an actual leader, right? And because if you're a leader, as long as you're not trying to lead people to crash out and you're trying to lead people to a better situation, then you're thinking of yourself and them. And most times I'll paint the picture of this. I tell my kids this. I got 2 daughters and a son. I've let them know many a times, and specifically speaking to my son in these moments, that if a plane crashed through this ceiling right now, the first thing y'all are going to do is look at me. If I'm panicking, y'all are going to panic. If I'm stable, that's going to calm y'all a bit. So in that moment, I have to make sure y'all are fine. That doesn't mean I don't get to be scared or any of those. It's just in that moment, that has to hit the backside because I'm the leader and I got to make sure y'all are good. Yeah. When you have that type of mentality for your crew, your group, or just the community at large, then you start understanding things different. And therefore, you know you can't crash out. You know in these moments of high stress and volatile things that you got to be able to grab in that moment and pull back down and get this here. Because if you fumble, that's possibly mess it up for a lot more people. But also being able to sit at a place where people can respect your ability to, under pressure, still have a clear mind. A lot of people are great till they upset. That changes. But your ability to really know yourself, and I think that's really what all of this boils down to, is being able to know who you are. A lot of us are just running on a program that we got uploaded with before we even knew what that was. And so being that we're operating off that, we don't actually know ourselves outside of a context, a specific context. A lot of us know who we are in the streets, but again, who are you when we ask somebody what do they like to do that makes you feel good? A lot of times asking men that, black men specifically, it's like, oh, you like chilling? What does chilling mean? Like, what you mean? Like, is it fishing? Is it like, what is it? And a lot of times people can't answer that because they've not done a lot of self-reflection, but also being real with themselves to the point that it's ugly, bro. That shit is nasty when you're going through that transition, that conflict, that mental conflict as you're trying to elevate and get to another space. That is that's probably worse than any disrespect that you've dealt with outside. It's what's going on in here because you know all the details. And when you're done lying to yourself and being real with yourself, that humbles you. And then from there, you're able to have a better control because you're actually real about why this thing is triggering you. This nigga didn't disrespect you. You just got some shame about something, or the uncle used to yell at you this way, and every time you hear somebody, it turns you up because you felt defenseless then. So now you're acting out, and it's really about your uncle. It ain't about old boy in here that just said something directly to you and spoke to you as a man. It's all of those elements. So just understanding that, I think getting to the space where you can be corrected, understanding that part, and being corrected by the people who are following you. Because they're getting the whole view. No matter who you are, you got blind spots. You're you. I get to experience you. So because I'm experiencing you, I'm actually more of a master of who you are and how you respond and how you act and you think you are. You don't know what you look like under pressure. You don't know what you look like when you're lying. And if I'm around you enough, I'm able to pick up on those details. You know? Real talk. Legit. So yeah. So getting to that space is just, being in the real king position. The warrior, that's a part of the process. But there comes a position or comes a time in life, if you are lucky to live long enough and age out of that, and let me not even say age out, mentally get to a space where you can leave that warrior for times that it is war and operate from a space of peace. We're going to figure this out.
Which is the philosopher in a sense, because the philosopher has an understanding for self, for different elements of how to deal with people, how to be fluid with people. So like you said, I'm being able to use your anger, your happiness, your sadness, your depression not against you in a bad way, but there's positive ways to use those kind of things against people too, because you know what frequency they're on, the energy, the aura that they're operating in. You know what I'm saying? Being that you're from the streets and you have been in the corporate world, entrepreneurship, and the 9-to-5 life, what is your definition of a boss and a leader?
Definition of a boss and a leader is it's going to boil down to somebody that understands that it's bigger than just them. There's a lot of people operating from a selfish space, and that's understandable. I'm going to say that, right? Self-preservation is typically what we run on. But being able to put yourself in a position where you are thinking of the whole, that's that's where it's at. Not just thinking, but also making sure that these people are in position to be successful also. You can't just have one big chain and everybody else looking hungry. You know what I'm saying? And when these opportunities show up, they're presented. You can talk to the homies. I will throw it here. This is what I see that you could do well.
Yeah.
I think you may not have thought this of yourself, because I understand the limited factors that we all have. The bros will tell you. I'll point it out in a second. I'm like, bro, you would be really good doing X, Y, Z. This is something you might want to look into. You know what I'm saying? And it's dope. So it's being able to actually uplift, but I also feel like as a leader, you should also, for the most part, be leading from the back and letting people know that you are in here. Nobody should be able to look at this group and identify the leader if we all got our mouth closed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So we're in Seattle now. Now we're going to Portland. But between Seattle and Portland, where did the concept for the 9 brand come about?
All right. So what's interesting of the pathway of how the 9 brand came through, it didn't start as the idea of wanting a clothing brand. That wasn't necessarily a goal of mine, I'll say, right? I'm a creative. I just need to create. And so there's always been something that I've been a part of that I've been able to make from scratch and turn an idea into an actualized item in front of you. With that, moving to Portland, this is going to be a quick 6-month thing. Here I am 13 years later. But in that process, it took me away from what I was used to, right? Where I was comfortable, where I knew the back streets, where I knew the peoples, I knew the floods, and then came to something that was completely foreign, and I didn't have no real reference points. So therefore, I had to pop out here, and I got to make a decision of, do I bring that to here, or do I show up in this way that's still me, true to me, but I get to shed some of the shenanigans? And that was like the first step. Came here, what I ended up doing was grabbing a camera, because they're going to let the cameraman in. I used to jump on at that time. It was MySpace was transitioning into Facebook being the top app at that time. Bro, I would just look on there, see where the black people were at. Cool, they're here. Show up and be like, oh, I'm down from Seattle. I still have my Washington ID, so I'll be like, I'm from Seattle, I'm the cameraman. Oh, yeah, come in, put the bag up there. Bro, sliding through. I'll just take pictures. I didn't know what I was doing at that point, but taking that, uploading them all, so people are coming tagging themselves. So that started being how I was getting into the spaces, and then from there, having my side conversations, yada, yada, yada. Transition in to start doing just some video work, right? Again, just another creative little avenue. Around that time, it was like, all right, I got some downtime, hop back into schools. Like, let me actually try to see if I can do something with this. So went and got a little multimedia degree from the PCC down here. Through that time, building up clientele, building up a reputation. And then about 2016, that got kind of burnt. I was burnt out in the video. I got burnt on the music video portion and the lack of creativity. Too many cats just wanted to stand in front of a car and the homie standing in the back, and I was like, this ain't fun no more. So with that, it's like, what's that next thing? And it was like, I'm a person that, you are the brand. And I try to tell people, you can go back to all the social medias, 2010, 2011. I would say, be your brand. You are the brand. Be your brand. And that was a push of who you show up as. I love being able to walk through the city and talk to people, and they know me on my own. It's not about high school. This ain't about my big cousin. It ain't none of that. It's about who I am. And the respect in which I get, that's all based on me showing up as who I am consistently. So I've been the brand. And that translates. And I think that now, touching back to that the clothing thing in general, so that little situation way back then is probably why I got too many shoes at this point to count, because getting flamed that one day. But I think that played into like, okay, but I'm also a cat that, bro, I'm from the 80s, born in the 80s, product of the 90s. Some of this new stuff, it ain't for me. You know what I'm saying? I just turned that 40 years old, so I can't be too trendy. So I think I found that nice little middle of the road, and sometimes trying to find stuff that's fly, but also motivational, right? Like, that's the bigger push. It's trying to inspire. So a lot of the joints that I have, or a lot of the ideas that I had before I actually formed the 9 brand, was like being able to create some pieces that are dope pieces, but got messages with them at the same time. A lot of people just throw some text on stuff, and it's like, that's great and all, but some things you want to get into the line of it being fashion versus just a shirt. You know what I'm saying? And so had this idea of like, okay, I can actually do something with this. Went and bought a whole little screen print setup and got busy with it. And the first couple of years, I think I started with a visionary shirt. This joint that said visionary, big ski mask on the front, visionary across the eye, and then the X over the mouth, which was the idea behind that is, a lot of times it's hard to articulate your vision. So that's where the X comes. You just got to see it. Do the work. They'll see it too. Because if I'm trying to break down the nuances of what I'm saying, if you're not there and you've not experienced whatever, or I might be just thinking of something that's not been created yet. So there's no way there for you to see and understand what I'm talking about. And so that whole thing was built on the idea about just get to it. Don't focus on trying to explain this to people. Show people. Then they'll get behind it. Because we can all just run the word. So that kind of spent from there. People latched on. And then the rest has been history through just creating pieces that identify with sayings. I mean, right here, it's to the nines. To the nines. Which the whole, premise of that's the slogan. And that's based on the idea of like dress to the nines. But instead of dress to the nines, do your life to the nines. Whatever it is that you're going to do, put that heart into that. Do that to the nines. If you're going to spend some time with it, do it right. Yeah. So coming from the streets, being an ex-hustler in the game, how does it feel to have a legit plug now? Look. It's crazy because I feel like it's great. And then you get to when you get to this point of dealing with taxes and trying to do the stuff right. And as you start, it'd be rough sometimes looking at how them taxes be working. But with that said, it's coming without a lot of the extras, bro. I think there's just something to that peace of mind. And we was outside chopping it earlier, and I was saying there's something about being able to get to the space where I'm cool being corny. I'm cool just having fun. And it's not this, I'm trying to introduce myself in two ways. I'm letting you know who I am and and like, nah, that's Ken Jones. We doing it. If you don't know nothing about that, great. You know what I'm saying? For real. So being able to be and exist in this space is amazing, and not have the extras or the possibility of this pullover and now it's a wrap, or I'm out here talking and just happen to get jammed up and it's the possibility of the rap. You know what I mean? So not having that weighing over my head, that's clutch. So, now that you got the 9 brand, and being that you're originally from Diego, but you got ties in Seattle and Oregon, how has the support been from the 3 states? I feel like Portland shown me love. I know a lot of people come here specifically and be like, they've shown me love my whole time. I got nothing bad to say about it. Seattle, same thing. The people in which I rocked with, they didn't show me. They're in Tacoma. I was out in the TAC too. TAC partners and stuff. Is there. For sure. Same thing in Dago. I get orders going down there regularly. Now I feel like the I-5, I'm good. Now it's needing to get eastward. And start expanding that way. So what is the pros and cons of being a brand owner? Ooh. The pros, if you're a creative. So I'll say this for me, it's the outlet. There's something to when I have an idea, going and hopping on that laptop and getting them screens ready, hitting the sharp, pulling that joint off and being like, that's exactly what I had in my head. It's a release. It's an outlet. Again, if you know what you're doing, then you can actually generate some income, but this is the consistency that's got to be there. Some people, of course, hit a lick off the rip, but a lot of times it's building. Once people have identified that you're actually doing this, then they'll get that support going, right? So it usually takes a little moment. Now, the flip of that, getting into the cons, that list goes on. I think there's a lot of the people who take ownership into their own hands. It's a lot that come with it mentally. Because I think there's a lot of people who run into expecting more support than they're going to get at first. Because, again, people want to make sure that you're doing a thing. And strangers are typically going to support you more because they don't know you in general. So they're not attaching everything that they know about you to this thing. And that kind of opens up the path to when I hear people complaining, it's like, don't get on your family and your friends about not being your biggest supporters. It's like that. I don't really see nobody hopping online and just talking about Nike all day. So why they go hop online? And I get the idea of, cheer your friends, hype your friends and so on. But it's like, let's also take into account, like, you're a real person to them. And they get to praise you in a lot of regular ways. So I think there's the trouble that can come mentally if you're not prepared for not being accepted in the way that you want it to, because you think this is the greatest thing. This is your baby. So you expect everybody to be receptive to it. And I think there's a lot of people who get discouraged fairly early because it's not received the way in which they wanted it to. I think there's also, once you do start actually becoming more successful at it, there's this, there's an added layer of people wanting to attach to you and trying to navigate that without making people necessarily feel like you dubbing them, which sometimes you just got to dub because, again, you know exactly why they're there. And then getting to a level, I think, where, like, looking at me and bro talk about this, David, shout out David Jefferson, where you get to a level of success and people are seeing it as if you've always been. They're forgetting about where it started. Yeah. And so when you're giving them some game, some time, they want to be able to jump through all the steps and get to right where you're at. And when you're trying to pass on some game, they're like, oh, well, that's easy for you to say because you're successful. I didn't start successful. Yeah. And so sometimes I think that can be a bit frustrating. But again, going back to the positives of it, being able to actually have your outlet, create a thing and share it with the world and it be received. Again, it's not about the backpats and so on, but there is something about when you create something and people are drawn to it and connect with it. There is a demo out there for you. And I think people got to also spend more time figuring out what their demo is. Your demo may not be who you think it is, right? When you create art and put it into the world, once you release it to the world, it's no longer yours. It's their interpretation of it. So they're going to tell you what they like. And if you're creating it for them, then you need to make adjustments. But if you're creating for yourself, just keep creating. Yeah. You'll find who your demo is, and then that's where you focus on.
So being that you're a changed man now, and, you know, for the positive and, you know, for growth and self-betterment for your family and everything you're doing, have you found yourself bringing anything from your past into your future, though?
When you say, what do you mean?
Because you know how sometimes, no matter, you know, if we come from a lifestyle of the streets or whatever we were used to do, we're still human, bro. Nobody's perfect. So, you know, we can still bring certain ways into our new self. You know, it's nobody's 100%. You know what I'm saying?
So I think that's a conversation I just had with bro again, where who you are is who you are. Again, I'm at 40. Yeah. There are some things that are just there. Yeah. The thing is, when you real with yourself, you understand what actually triggers those things. Yeah. So therefore, you keep yourself away from those triggers. I know that feeling in me. I'll break it down like this. Y'all, when you go back, ask Ray if he'd ever seen me drunk. He'd seen me sauce, but nobody ever seen me drunk. There's a moment when I'm drinking, as soon as I start tasting alcohol again, I'm done. I don't care if I just bought the drink. That's there. Because I know that's me telling me that's it.
You already know where you're going to go.
That applies in these situations and scenarios. I know that little feeling when it start coming. I don't have the best ability to bring myself down once it's there. Like a lot of us, right? Yeah. I understand that. So when that little meter is starting to go, cool, I got to remove myself from this. Now, there are times where I still have to make a demonstration. It's like there are certain lines that are in the sand and those are going to remain forever. Right? But with that, it generally starts with a conversation. I used to have this whole thing of I don't argue with men. Now as an adult, a matured, more healed man, I'll go back and forth. I'm still not going to argue with you, but I'm going to go back and forth before I'm like, are we fighting or what? So that's being at the space. There's a lot of that still is there. But again, I think I've set up certain roadblocks. I understand where I get overstimulated in like a club space. I got about 30, 45 minutes. I got to get air. I need to be outside for a bit. If it's too much, it's too much. And I know at that point, this can go any type of way. I understand that about myself, so let me pull myself.
The anxiety and shit, man. PTSD.
Bro, it kicks in. And once, I make sure I share that with people and who I come across. I'm not dissing you. If I'm here for this 45 minutes and then I disappear, it ain't got nothing to do with you. Just understand. You know what I'm saying? Like I need a moment and I'll come back and get back to it. But I think there's those pieces. What I'll say also that I bring with is just that being that is a part of the fabric. It allows me still to be sitting in these corporate rooms, in these spaces, but also to be able to come here and sit and politic it back and forth because that ain't gone. That once that's in my fiber, that's there. You know what I mean? And I don't shun that part of me. It's a part of what's all going on. So therefore it's all intertwined, and being able to actually go into all these spaces, have conversations and relate at all these different levels with these different people, while being consistent to who I am, I think that's something that I've brought and that will always be with me. But I do know that there are some check marks that you'll snap back into it. My pops him and my stepmom just moved to Texas in 2021. They still lived in the set up until that. I go home, I visit home, so I'm still in the middle. And there's something about when you get in the space, right? It's certain things just kick back on without you even realizing it at times, and being able to realize like, okay, cool, I can't just go, even though I want to see the homies, y'all got to come to me over here at this neutral, you know what I'm saying, situation, so that it's not looking like anything, you know what I mean? It's bits and pieces like that. So it's having to set yourself up the same way somebody that went through recovery. You're not going to just go and be, for the most part, at a little toot party. Because, tell you, it's going to go.
WWE trying to tap you in.
That's hilarious. But just that. So you got to set yourself up where I'm aware of myself. So there's certain things that I see it coming.
Is there a misunderstanding people have about the 9 brand?
I think when it first was dropping, that it was probably something gang related. I think that definitely kicked into some of the feedback that was coming. They was wondering that because just nines, and and then some people know me from home. 9-0s might have been the area I lived in and things like that, but it had nothing to do with that. I think people, once they actually hear what the 9 brands stand for, they're sold. And enough of these pop-up events and things I've been a part of, I got a whole setup, and usually people come in there curious about what does that mean. And once it's broken down, they're like, okay. And it's interesting because once we get outside of the culture of just, other black and brown, and we're dealing with, your Caucasian customers as they're coming through, and once they hear what this is about and what it stands for, I think it changes their view of what's being offered here. Now that IX looks different. And they're just going to go ahead, I'll get a bucket hat. I'll get this now because now I know that it's not tied into some shenanigans. I
don't got to worry about my head being on a platter across town somewhere. Being this is the Game 365 podcast, it's just a question that I ask everybody. What's your definition of game?
Definition of game. I think it's the not only the understanding, but the ability to communicate your understanding on a lot of different topics.
Yeah, that's important. Very important. Simple, but means a lot if you really break it down.
If you can get your thought out your head, that's a majority of what misunderstandings come from, is not being able to articulate yourself correctly. So many things, you notice how many situations go up, and then once people sit down and actually get time to fully explain themselves, it's like, oh, I thought you were saying. Because a lot of times people can't get it out in a few words, and misunderstandings happen a lot there. So your ability to sit and take this conversation in, and then, okay, cool, I got this, and now I can explain this here in a whole way simpler way. I apply that same mentality with my work. What I'm good at is taking all this technical jargon and then having a conversation with you and getting you to understand what it sounds like it's impossible. But all this stuff is just, it's words. And so your ability to take in and be able to express, because then you're actually able to connect. And if you got some game about yourself, that means you can maneuver and connect.
Facts. So speaking about the tech, part of you or that you're into now or you've been into, let's talk about that. So what kind of like steered you in that direction of, really getting techie, you know what I'm saying? And start really identifying, like, I like this shit.
Oregon Trail on the computer. Like, as a kid, I think that was the start of it. Then also very, very core memories of coming home from vacation and the internet being a thing. And the amount of time that I spent, the internet or Wi-Fi worked best in the bathroom in my master bedroom at that time. I was 20. How to print. I taught myself how to mix music, how to EQ. It was because I can just ask the question. Then that led into understanding file sharing, then getting cracked software. It was this progression, and there's something that come from it, and my ability to understand. Again, I'm not a super technical person when it comes to just jargon. I'm good at figuring out what's needed to retain and what ain't necessary.
Especially for yourself and what you got going on.
Exactly. And so I think that once I saw that that's not a skill set people just be having. Like people, now we're so used to having it, but this was pre being able to hop on the internet on your phone. It's like, I know how to navigate this computer, that type of stuff, software and all that come to me fairly easy. And I think part of that, again, curiosity. Being a curious person in general, I'm going to get to clicking and get the how to do the thing. And then systems. I tell people there's systems thinking, right? I ain't never lost my keys. Part of the reason I don't sit my keys just anywhere. So my keys are going to be in 1 of 3 places in my house. 1 of 3. And I'm going to actually say 1 of 2. The third place, it could possibly be there with 1 or 2. It's a system. So if they are not in those places, that means somebody else can move this. And that's the same thing when you can get into these systems, ways of thinking, figuring stuff out. You need to create a system for yourself. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. Once you get that down, that makes stuff repeatable, right? And once you can repeat a process, then you can scale it, then you can sell it, all the stuff. So
organization, structure is very important then. And I don't mean to cut you off, but that's unique that you said that, because Motherfuckers would never think somebody that come from where we come from would be able to align and place himself in that realm of thought, especially, you know, no matter where you at in your life. You know what I'm saying? So that's good. That's actually good.
I think some of it honestly come from, this is the most people that go on vacation, take a trip to a destination for a while, you know, we think of all the hardship in there, but there are certain structures that are in place. there's politics and structures and steps that you have to do day in and day out. And I think that played into how I approach some of this stuff. It's a sense whether I want to do it or not, just get it done. And once I figure that out, boom. And taking that, getting to the part where I mentioned earlier about it's dope being corny. Like once I was over that fear of you gonna think, if I'm doing it, then I ain't cool. Whatever, right? Like this is stuff written down, and this is what I'm gonna highlight too. I ain't mentioned it this whole talk, but any of y'all ever seen any of the previous interviews or shows I've been a part of? I always preach to keep a journal. It's not a dear diary. I did this today, but keep a journal and just log in the things that you come across in conversation, or you read something and it's like, why did that impact? Why do I feel some type of way about that? Go home and pencil that out. Pencil your thoughts out. Pencil just loose parts of plans. These could be, some days I might write 3 sentences. Other days it's 4 pages. But just getting that stuff out, because you got a reference point to come back to. Yeah, we can keep a lot of stuff in our head, but at the same time, there's certain stuff that has to get moved out in order to get new information in there. So you're constantly dumping information to pull new information in. So a lot of your dope thoughts and stuff get lost in translation if you're not putting them somewhere you can refer back to them. So I'm going to throw that there. With that, coming into setting the goals, that's a bigger thing. I'm a person that set goals to prove points to myself, because then it allows me to, when somebody tells me you can't do a thing, it's like, nah, bro, I'm going to show you that this can be done. Similar to going and getting my degree. When I talked about getting the 2 year, bro, while working full time, my child lived with me. I'm a full-time soccer dad, all that, and was like, realized that, oh, if I get this next up degree of getting to the bachelor's, that's going to open up quite a few more opportunities. And what I will say is that's not necessarily the way to go, viewers. If you got the skills, now is a beautiful time of just being able to apply them without a degree. But with that said, I was like, did the math. Okay, it would take me 18 months to go to school full time, even though I'm working full time and full time father. We're going to get this done. Yeah. I would not advise that, but I did it. Being able to walk across that stage with honors on Father's Day, for my pops to be able to see that and my children to watch me walk, y'all can't tell me you can't do nothing. If you want to do it, you'll make it happen, right? And so from that point, it was like, wanting to get in the tech field, that was before the super boom. My thing was wanting to be able to teach people this stuff and teach people that look like us. Yeah. Not the I'm super preppy and da-da-da-da. Because when we speak in our language, again, the nuance, we're not having to decode. So therefore I can give you a reference that makes sense about some 90s rap and why this now all of a sudden connects for you. Because that's what, as far as adult learning, you got to hit on stuff that's relevant and things that make sense of how that applies to your life. So that being a goal of wanting to get to the space, and not even just in a job setting, but being able to get people with technology, get them up to speed. So people transitioning back home. Look, here, we can get this set up. Yeah. It's a lot that can be overwhelming about it, but here we can streamline some of that. But then also for the people that want to make their career pivots and go from what they're doing, and here's a skill set you can pick up. So I want to be able to introduce that. That was my mentality, which led me into being able to get a job at a software company, essentially teaching people how to work with data and databases. And that's opened me up to a lot of other, opportunities. And again, and I do it just like this. My stuff, they get the hat. I might tone it down and just have a Nike little dry fit hat or something. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I'm hitting 100 level CSAT scores. People are looking forward to being in whatever other classes that I'm offering, just because you're not getting the dry eye guy. I'm in here talking to you. I'm laughing at myself because I done stumbled over this word or whatever it may be in those type of interactions. And I know if I can do that at a corporate level, I can do this with you and I. So, and that's where the transition is going to come into, and something that's sustainable, because education is always going to be a priority at some space, but also it's for people that look like this, because I've had all the self-doubt of, oh, how that's going to work. I got all, looking at my tattoos while I'm up here, or the way I say this. I don't be, pronouncing words a certain way, and realizing that people ain't dialed in like that. As long as you know what you're trying to teach them, and then you're connecting with them. People rock with people better. So that's another one of those little gang pieces. If you are able to connect with people in general, that is probably the greatest asset that you can have navigating this life and trying to get to this place that you've defined as what is success for you. If you have people skills. Yeah.
Black man in tech.
Yeah.
How do you feel about AI, artificial intelligence?
I love it. So this is where a lot of people in conversations that I have, so AI has been a thing. I know it's a catch-all at this point, but AI has been that predictive text. That's AI. All this stuff has been around. When we start sending voice notes, these apps was getting trained on that since forever. The way that I've been explaining this to people is that this has helped to level a lot of playing fields. People are like, "Oh, it's going to take our jobs," and da, 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 da. Yeah, it's gonna remove the same way that when the cotton gin came out, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
that changed things how they move. When the car came out, there's a lot of people with a lot of horses that was like, "What?"
Yeah.
So it's always going to be a forward progression. With that said, understand that this is a tool. You just need to figure out the tools that you need. If you walk into Home Depot, you get overwhelmed if you came in here and have no idea of what you need. But if you just need a screwdriver, you don't need to be over in the PVC aisle.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't need to be looking at PVC cutters. So once you understand what tools work for you, the other is just noise. Of course, be open to what else may be able to be added to that tool belt that can help. But quit trying to know everything and figure out what works for you and make it work for you. Because the people that are actually going to get left behind are the people who are afraid of it and not jumping into figuring out how to make it work for them. The best game that I try to give people, we all know ChatGPT at this point. When that first dropped in November of 22, the amount of conversations that I had with people that were just like, "Oh, so it's basically like Google," and it's like, no, it's not. It's different than that. At this point, I use ChatGPT like the tutor. I'll be working on something, or I then wrote a paragraph, and I'm like, something about this could be said better. Throw that in there, boop, and it gets it back. There we go. Or I'm thinking of this word. I'm blanking on this word. It's boop. There. That's what I was looking for. It's a lot of that, or to give the structures and so on. But there's a lot of tools at our disposal right now that help to even the playing field. And what I mean by that is going back to when we talked about people being able to articulate themselves. I was having a conversation with this older white man who was kind of anxious about ChatGPT because he had college-age students or high school-age students who would do these essays in which he would award grants and get them college scholarships based on these submissions. And he was like, how do I know they're just not throwing it in there? And I was like, that shouldn't be of your concern. Reason being is there's a lot of people that have a great story to tell and don't know how to structure a story. This gives them ability now to compete with that person that can tell that story. If this is about what their passion is and so on, they can communicate that, but it may be all over the place. And this now helps that to pull this down. Again, it's a tool. Now, if you're worried about them possibly just throwing something in there, a prompt in there, and them getting everything written, then just ask them about what it is that they should be able to explain what these things mean.
Yeah.
That's where it gets down to. And I think that's like, I want people to understand it's evened it, because now that professional writer, you're able to get in the space of sounding a certain way if that's what you want to do. If you want to create content, it's speeding up your process. You don't have to sit here and think of these creative titles. Like, bro, there'll be brain fog sometimes. I'm sitting there trying to, and it's like being able to say, hey, there we go. It's basically helping you brainstorm. And now I done eased up this process. I've done stuff where it's like, I just need you to bullet point out this. So it's formatted a whole page that would have took me 30 minutes to get through, and it did it in 3.
Exactly.
Just a few prompts and a few little reworks. So it's stuff like that part of what me doing the whole I Technically Can stuff is to give people some game about that. So they aware that this stuff is out here, not to be scared of it. And also it's for us. It's for all of us. This ain't something, when that language model dropped, it made it so that you can just have a conversation. And that's really what the difference is. Whereas before you had to be a programmer, you had to be techie. No, you don't. You just need to be able to say words and not even spell the words. Just give it in the roundabout. And at this point, you can talk your prompt into it. Use the tools that are there. Don't be scared of these joints. Figure out what you need. If somebody came right now with one of them hella big ass chainsaws they use for the redwoods and shit, that's an intimidating thing. That's a tool I don't need, but it's intimidating sitting and staring at that. Now give me some hedge trimmers and I'm good. I need that because I got some bushes at the house, right? So it's like, figure that thing you need and don't worry about what's not for you. Yeah.
So last question, but it's 2-part. First, tell them what I Technically Can's all about. Yeah. Second part, give them everything you got going on and future, with 9 brand.
Gotcha. Well, I Technically Can, all one word, lowercase I. Tech, it's a play on technically, and then K-A-N. So that whole thing is just what I was explaining in terms of I want to make technology work for everybody. So essentially it's tech for the non-techie. Yeah. That's it. That's what I lay it out as. Mm-hmm. This is just me having a conversation and breaking this down and being able to be a familiar voice, be a familiar dialect, a familiar reference point, and so on when I'm talking about this tech stuff, so that it's not intimidating. Mm-hmm. It's trying to strip down that so that people are more receptive to it, along with looking like I look. Y'all can see that you can come from it and still do it, and want to get people who are in that transition of, you have this skill set in you and you can actually get to it. Even I tell the homies that's locked, like, well, if you can do this and you're good at this, they don't give it. You can be, you can go out here and just be doing contracts for, like, why am I not commissioned? Anyways, you can go out here and basically work for yourself, but come in and put people's stuff together. Mm-hmm. If you know what you're doing, you can set this up in a way that works for you. Mm-hmm. With that, check out the Instagram at I Technically Can. For that, I'll be dropping gems on there and little videos and stuff, and then just some of my likes. I also want to show that the duality of you can be living life and be into some things that would be considered, the dork, smart kid, all that stuff, which is goofiness. Sure. But as far as the 9 brand go, though, that's just a consistent thing. I tell people that this is a piece of expression for me. So the drops are going to continue to come. It's ideas as they pop in. I do short, small runs. So when it's done, it's done.
Move on to the next one?
Move on to the next one. I found it specifically like my hats. That's the space in which I've had a lot of success in. And even though I keep the same 9s logo on the joint, the side patches change. Mm-hmm. And so it may be the same colorway, but usually that patch, once I've done that collection for that season, then that's done. So it becomes a collector item. Yeah. That's what it's the bigger goal.
That's what's good. It's unique to what you got going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's hard.
And of course, with that, we pop it. I've been doing a bunch of pop-ups, got my online stuff. I don't know if I ever want to transition into brick and mortar. Mm-hmm. Like, that's something that I'm not really pressed on it like that. Again, for me, I do the stuff. Only thing I don't do is the embroidery. I got those set up. I get all this stuff going in-house. So it lets me have that outlet of pushing away from the computer. I'm not outside doing something that I can just be in here putting these joints together. With that is found as the IX brand, which is the Roman numeral 9. So making sure to put that out. At some point, I need to buy all those other domain names, but it's the IX brand. And I'd actually be up in Seattle for one of the Soul Sneakers, Soul Fest, something like that's coming up here in a couple weeks. And with that, it's just going to be continuously popping up at the places in the spaces we're supposed to be at. I know there might be some things in the pipeline coming down with you.
Yeah, for sure. We got a network, put something together. Give everybody the social media and everything to follow you real quick, man.
So it's at the IX brand, all one word. You can find what we got available at theixbrand.co, not com. Don't add the M, just .co. That's where we at. You go find out on all the socials. If you're just trying to figure more out about who I am, that I Technically Can page is going to get you more bars of just that. What I do want to do, right quick before we get up out here, want to shout out the We Out Here creative space. That's what's letting us use this space.
Yeah, shout out to the creative space for sure. Definitely that, man. Appreciate the brothers and everybody that allowed us to shoot this interview, man, and put it together, man. 9 brand, Game 365 podcast. We out.